Hello, everybody. Welcome back to 40 Fever. Welcome to this week's preview episode. Yes, midweek, back again. Another 12 matches to come in League Two this week. There's not really much to say in terms of other news in the week, so we'll probably be looking more of the games in this week. And we can promise you now it won't be an hour and a half because we're recording this at 20 to 10. Which is all right for us actually on some of these midweeks. It's not like the gone midnight that me and Luke normally record. So I think we're doing all right there. We're going to try for this we're aiming for the hour. We'll see how that goes. But I've mentioned Luke. We've also got Jack again, who joins us today. So good evening, lads. How are we?
Yeah, not too bad.
Got an oversat yet?
To be honest, I've totally forgotten about it already. I'm looking full steam ahead to Chesterfield and trying to figure out how on earth we're going to play them with one fullback. But yeah, we'll get onto that.
Yeah, good mate. Just looking forward to the weekend. Nearly there now.
Good stuff. We are certainly nearly there. It's sort of flown this week, probably because I'm not doing a great deal with my life at the minute other than work. But that's for a conversation that I don't want to bore you to death with. But a lot to get through in this one. And we're going to do it quite quickly, I think. We're going to be having a look at the 12 games. We'll just give our thoughts on it because there's only really so much you can say in terms of preview games. I know that Jack in particular has done a little bit of prep for it. I'm not sure how big, but that's what he's mentioned to me off camera. And we'll also get into this week's fan feature. It was an interesting one, very last minute call because we struggle Fridays for these. We're not great with ideas. We're not really great at preparing for podcasts in particular. We sort of just wing it. So we're going to be having a look at the leagues, what we feel are the league's most underrated players, and I've got a few things to say about it on a few players. But before we do start this podcast, of course, if you could do the usual, if you're new around here, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, comment your thoughts on the podcast, and thank you to Sky Bet, of course, for sponsoring this podcast as always. And of course, to download the podcast wherever you get yours from as well. We do read your comments, especially the other day we was reading some stuff about the 6-game thing that we did, and probably not giving enough teams more credit, or more airspace, which is what we're going to try and do going forward. I think we've realised that we've been speaking about our teams a little bit, but it'd probably help if your games probably. Oh, to be fair, I think it was quite harsh because there were some half decent games on last week actually, and we could have picked a couple. But we'll try and make more of an effort going forward, and we'll make sure we'll try and give you the best content that League Two has to offer, of course, going forward. And I thank you for the support on the last podcast as well. Really do appreciate it. Nearly 2K views the last time I checked on that. It's done well on YouTube, that. So thanks for that. Anyway, let's crack on. Bits to get through. We'll start before we have a look at the games and what we think. Let's have a look at these certain graphics. Of course, you'd probably have known by now it was Grimsby went to MK Dons and beat them 3-2. We're 3-0 up in half an hour. I have to get that one in again. But also in the FTF, or table-wise or games-wise, however you want to put it, Salford played Tranmere last week as well and won 3-1. So we're updating the FTF table. It's been a while since you've seen it, but here it currently stands at the minute. You may have noticed we've now got Gills in there. We've got Jack in there as well, alongside Harry Gunn. Of course, if you watched the podcast last week with it was more Gills based, but it was still sort of a preview podcast. He's coming on the team permanently as well now, so you'll probably see him on Sunday. But that's how it looks like at the minute. Myself and Jake from 2 wins from 2. Or 2 wins from 2 when they're opening 2 games. Kieran, 3 defeats from 3, -3 goal difference, and Newport play Tranmere this weekend. So it could potential to be 4 defeats from 4 and looks very messy already. I mean, from Tranmere with Jack, 2 games played, 1 draw. Of course, that 1 draw was coming against Gillingham, who I only found out about an hour ago after doing this because I totally forgot that game even happened. Late equaliser for Gills. I remember from, of course, the now departure Gabode or in that one. So so that's sort of how it is at the minute. Luke Payne, two games played, the 1 win and the 1 defeat in that one. He sits on 3 points. A lot of more action still to go on that one. But that's how sort of things stand at the minute as the games start to come thick and fast, and there'll be some change in the table. Although, granted, I don't think there'll be much change in Kieran at the bottom at the minute. Are you happy so far? I mean, Luke, you're not bottom yet.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Like, I have like such low expectations. Honestly, if I finish fifth out of sixth on this, that is absolutely fine. I want to finish bottom again.
We're still unbeaten. Just leave it at that. We'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong there. So yeah, there's that. Right, prediction league. I know we've not done this for a while. If you really want to keep up to date, we normally do update these quite a lot on Twitter. We'll only show you this graphic for now from the recent one or the recent set of games from last week. Luke came up against. It was an Oldham fan. Their name escapes me at the top of my head. Can you remember, Luke? I feel so bad.
Was it Kerry?
Kerry. That sounds right, doesn't it?
I believe so. Yeah, it was a close round.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry if if that's wrong and we've totally got that wrong. But yeah, I mean, no correct scores for correct score lines, but Luke got 5 correct results to Kerry's 3, meaning he got 5 points. With him winning a round on that one. Overall, the FTF boys still winning on that one with 54 points compared to the guest is 51. We won't go on this too much, and we won't show the other graphic because 1, Luke says it's wrong, and 2, from the 2 games I've done, and from the 2 all the 2 match days I've done, I'm currently on 9 points, and then it's pretty embarrassing. Can't lie, and especially the last one as well. The last match, the match day, I got 3 points. We won't talk. So that's them updated. Let's have a look at this week's games. There's not really much to say other than in terms of outside news, other than the fact that I also noticed that Notts County's, I think, director of football has gone after the one summer. But that's really about it, really, and it's quite an interesting one with that. We'll go through these in the order as they come across. Like I said, we will break halfway through for the feature. We start off in this list with Accrington Stanley. They're coming up against Colchester United. Now, Accrington have played a game less than most of the other teams. I think them and Tranmere have played the same amount, as I'm saying, in 6. 3 points picked up for Accrington so far. 3 goals scored, 7 conceded. Those 3 points, all 3 of them have been draws. They're coming up against Colchester, in which they're currently 16th. They picked up 7 points from their first 7. They've scored 7. They've conceded 8. Their last result was a 1-1 draw at home to Crewe, Alexandra. Looked like they probably did enough to win the game, especially in their second half show, and they looked really good. They've been quite inconsistent so far this season. They have beaten the likes of they have beaten Shrewsbury. I mean, in the league, they drew 1-1 with Barnet. I think that was a late Barnet equaliser from memory. And they've lost to the likes of Barrow. They've lost to Cambridge, and they drew the opening 2 games to Oldham and Colchester. Now, it's a really interesting game. I think how you put it, Accrington are really yet to get going. You could probably say the same for Colchester, to be fair. Quite a few draws in that. Probably would probably like a few more wins. They probably do feel that maybe they have deserved a few more points than what they maybe have done. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this fixture it's a bit of a strange one. I mean, it's very draw heavy if you look at the results up to this point. Accrington have drawn half of their games. Colchester have drawn over half of their games. So if you're the one predicting it, then you'd certainly lean towards a draw. But then at the same time, it feels like Colchester do need to pick up at some point. We know they're a very they are a very strong side. It's just they don't necessarily finish games off all that well. But then with Accrington, they've still got this of goal scoring. Goal scoring is such a huge problem for them. I think they've got 3 goals this season. All of them are Tyler Walton. Although they do have Paddy Madden, who obviously played his first game the other day, so that will help. But whether they'll have enough to deal with Colchester, I'm not so sure. I don't necessarily know where I'd go in terms of predictions on this one, but I'm quite glad that it's not my turn to to be fair. I mean, I'd like to think Colchester would win it, but I really don't know. Accrington have looked better again when they've played better teams, weirdly. So it's a strange one.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. The 3 draws I've had, when you look at it, I mean, they've drawn at home to Gillingham, at home to Grimsby Town, and then had a draw away at Shrewsbury, and to be fair, any away point is generally it's a good point, isn't it? When you sort of, especially when you're sort of at that end of the table. The result last week would have hurt Accrington for sure. So I think they're going to be trying to, well, clearly they're going to be trying to do whatever they can to avoid defeat if they can. And I think the Colchester one's interesting. I think they've been unlucky because they signed Will Goodwin and he's barely played. I think he's injured. I'm not sure how long for. I think it's probably got another few weeks on it. But if you look at their attack, there's an awful lot of pace in there, and I can't work out how they're not killing games off, especially against some of the teams that they've played. And defensively even. I mean, Jack Tucker, I think has he scored 3 this year? I want to say he's come in the summer. He scored 3 goals, which is great. I'm really pleased for him as he's one of ours. So buzzing for Jack Tucker, but it's just a bit of a confusing one. They have just brought in Micah and Bick from Charlton. So that might turn their fortunes around. He's really highly rated at Cheltenham, probably more so even than Kaheim Dixon, who's ended up at Crawley. He started okay, and Daniel Carno, who's at Walsall, he scored the winner against Chesterfield. So he could be a really exciting addition for them. The only other thing with Colchester is I don't really feel like they've played anybody that started strongly yet, other than Crewe last Saturday. If you look at the majority of their fixtures, I think arguably Cambridge would have been their toughest game up until last Saturday. So it is a little bit of an odd one for them. If we're gonna put me on the spot and ask for a prediction, I'm actually going to go 0-0. I think Accrington. I'm not gonna ruin the feature in a little while, so I won't talk about it too in depth. But I think Samson Tavide is a player that can either absolutely rip a team to pieces for Colchester, or he can focus far too much on doing everything else other than actually playing the game, tussling, getting frustrated, and all of that. And I think he's one of those that's relatively easy to keep quiet and keep calm. And I actually think that's the only reason he's still in League Two. To be fair, the fact that Joe Bode's just moved to Luton Town and Samson Tavide is still in League Two is quite telling. And I think that I think the Cowleys will see an away point is a good point. So I don't think they're not going to get the team to go gung ho and try and score a load of goals. I think both teams are going to try and preserve before they go out and try and break their necks to win the game. So I'm suggesting 0-0, but I think of the two, you'd probably say Colchester would be more likely to nick it, but I think it'll be a 0-0.
Perfect. Look, we're going to be using your predictions anyway, so the pressure's all on you. In terms of my prediction, I probably agree. I just think Colchester have enough to nick it. I can see them keeping a clean sheet. Actually, I'm going to go for a 1-0 Colchester. What are you saying, Luke?
I think I'm going to go 1-1. I'm going to assume that it just sticks with the draws trend. I think that would be bad for Colchester personally, because I think they just need to get a win. I know they've got one, but a team with their ambition for me should have more. But no, I'll go 1-1.
Perfect. Right, let's move on then. Crawley Town are coming up against Cheltenham Town this weekend. Now, big weekend for both of them last week, both picking up their first victories of the season. Don't know what I mean. Both picking up their first victories last week, long overdue. Crawley, 7 games played so far. Of course, that was their first win. Picked up 5 points total. They've scored 5, conceded 11. Their win coming in against Harrogate. They looked really good last week as well. It looked like a real good win at Harrogate. As for Cheltenham, I think we were looking at that game against Accrington last week, and it already felt like a pretty big one. Isaac Hutchinson's free kick, the difference in that very early on. It's given them 3 points, but I don't think it really counts for much unless they go to this game and get something. I think it's probably the same for Crawley as well. I think considering how they started, I think already again this is sort of a big game for both down at the bottom end, because can I see both of these or either of these teams, climbing up much higher? Crawley 20th at the minute, but can I really see them going much higher at the minute in terms of I know there's a long way to go, but can I see them doing that? Probably not at the minute. I'm not really that sold on much of them. So I get the impression this is a big game for both this weekend, and I need to build on their result from last week.
Well, yeah, it's I mean, it's definitely a crucial one. I mean, for Crawley, their home form to start the season hasn't been great. The only point they've picked up at home was against us. But then at the same time, I think that game sort of there's a lot going on in the background there with all the various links between the two clubs over the past sort of 12 months. But then the last couple of results, as you said, they have improved a little bit. And they picked up a couple of decent points. They finally got that win. But then from a Cheltenham perspective, I'm looking at it as, well, they don't score. They don't score many. They're joint lowest scorers in the league alongside Accrington. And they've scored one goal from open play, and I think the other two were both set pieces, one of which obviously being the free kick on Saturday. And then, I just don't think they set up very well on the road. I know they've made improvements defensively as well. Obviously, Sam Sheringham and that coming in. Do I think it's going to make a major difference going away to someone like Crawley? Probably not. I'd lean towards Crawley winning this one and, putting a bit of a statement win out there. I'll go 2-0 Crawley.
Yeah, do you know what? We're kind of thinking exactly on the same lines there, to be fair. I was quite big on Cheltenham last week when we were talking about the home game against Accrington, and I still quite like their squad for what it is that they're going to be fighting for this season comparative to some of the teams around them. I don't think Crawley are going to be in a relegation scrap come sort of April, May time, to be honest. And it's just because I think Lindsay and Crawley are just they go so well together. I think the madness of Crawley Town, it suits him down to the ground, because Scott Lindsay, from a recruitment perspective, I feel like all he's ever doing is looking for players that need a second, third, fourth, or fifth chance in the EFL. He brings them in, and then he improves them and makes them EFL players. Some of the names they've signed this season, you think McCurdy. I don't need to go into Harry McCurdy. Everybody knows him. He's been, all over the place. He can be incredible. He can be a nightmare. You've got Tishimanga, who was at Swindon last season. I know from Peterborough did okay, but Dion Pereira, who's a player who's played for some big clubs in the EFL like Watford, Luton, Bradford, never really did much. Went down, had a really good season in the National League. Scott Lindsay picks him up, obviously. Same as Danny Cashman. Came through at a good academy in Brighton. Never really did anything on loan. Scored a hatful at Worthing in the National League South, and that's your Scott Lindsay sort of player. So I do think that they are improving. I think the performance last week against Harrogate was a really good one. I think the fact that he's still got his core, but obviously not as many, clearly not as many as there were when they went up, but the likes of Dion Conroy, Jack Rolls, Jay Williams, obviously excluding the however long it was at MK Dons. They're the guys that he knows and that he trusts. So you sprinkle all of that in. I think he's got a good group there. It's just going to take them. It has taken them, and it will continue to take them a bit of time to string some results together. I'm pretty confident. I had the exact same prediction as Luke. I'm pretty confident Crawley win this, and I had 2-0 in my head. I think they win it, and they win it comfortably. Always a chance that when you have got somebody with the quality of an Isaac Hutchinson, he could hit one from 30 yards, and Cheltenham might be able to sneak one in. But I just think it will be a game that Crawley will dominate the football. And I think they'll break them down. And I think they'll win it relatively comfortably.
I've seen more from Crawley than I have Cheltenham.
Absolutely,
I think most people have as well.
Yeah.
The table sort of says that a little bit. Although 7 games didn't get really judged too much, but in terms of the game, Crawley have picked up points against MK Dons. Well, probably, the Scott Lindsay factor maybe played its part in that one, but also going to Chesterfield, have very nearly won actually. So they do have results in them. Whereas Cheltenham, I don't think they've been that great in really many of their games.
No.
They did. They should have really lost to Salford if they could hit a barn door. Really, they'd have lost that game by quite a bit. I'm probably under the same impression as you. I think Crawley will win this. I think they'll win this 2-1. I could see both teams scoring, but I just think Crawley will just have enough. Luke, you gave your prediction for that, didn't you? You said 2-1, didn't you? Yeah, just because I'm getting muddled up there. Right, okay. Next game, Bristol Rovers coming up against Barrow. It's been a pretty good couple of weeks for Bristol Rovers. They've really got going in the league now. 3 straight wins in a row coming against Cambridge, Grimsby, and Newport. A real good win at Newport last week as well, although they nearly threw that away. But I mean, going 3 goals up, I mean, Nick Zanev was probably their best friend, but you've got to be in those positions to score anyway. Whereas Barrow, they've been weird, haven't they? Back-to-back defeats for them. They lost 3-1 at home to Swindon last week. And then, yes, Swindon, like I said, I certainly have been dead complimentary of some of the football they played. I mean, they lost the previous week to Fleetwood. Their only 2 wins so far have come against Notts County and at Colchester. That Colchester one is a real good win, actually, especially away from home. But they've also lost to Chesterfield. They've lost to MK Dons. I mean, 2 tough games there. They've had a couple of toughish games at the minute, but 2 wins from the 7 games so far with 5 defeats. Coming up against the Bristol Rovers side, who are really starting to find their feet now. I think it's certainly a big challenge for them.
It's certainly a challenge, but they've all been goal. Don't get me wrong, like Newport to bed, and that never should have been 3-2. They should have. They have played tough side. I sympathise a bit. It's just I would Bristol to also be one of those stronger sides. It's. I think I would lean towards Bristol Rovers still winning this one because I mean Barrow haven't drawn a game yet, so it feels like they can't. Well, the way you put it is if you can't win, don't lose. And I don't think that Barrow are very good at doing that job.
I'll just take it. I think I think you might be made a few really good points in there. I think the problem with Barrow is it's been either one or the other. They've either they're either winning or they're losing. There's no in between. I think if you look at some of the losses, like you mentioned, Jordan, you got MK Dons, you got Chesterfield, you got Swindon. I don't want to be overly critical because they are games that you would probably expect a team that are in the situation of that Barrow are in with the high turnover and all of that stuff. You would probably expect them to lose. Against Swindon, though, I would say they did also create a couple of really good opportunities to score, and I know Swindon do kind of allow for that in general. They do. That's kind of the way that they play. And on another day, you might have that game might have ended up 3-3. If they could have just put the ball away. I think the problem they've got, certainly at the top end of the pitch. They've signed Tyler Walker, they've signed Josh Gordon, they've signed Reece Healey. Reece Healey's already, with his past, and he's already injured. I think it's long term. I don't know how long for, but he's going to be out for quite some time. Tyler Walker's barely played for 2 or 3 seasons, I think. When he was coming through, he was phenomenal, but you've got somebody there who's really rusty and hasn't played anywhere near enough football recently. So it's going to take him a little while to get into it. And Josh Gordon, kind of similarly. I know he has been playing for Walsall, but his best spell in his career was at Barrow. 2-3 years ago. So again, it might take him a little bit of time to come through. I also think with Barrow, I can't see much else in that squad that makes me think they're going to go and score a load of goals. I know they've got the likes of Connor Mahoney, who I really rated when he left us a couple of years ago. When he went to Barrow, I thought, cool, you got a player there because he'd just come off of a relatively good season with us when we were poor. And they've brought Ben Whitfield back, and I like that signing because Ben Whitfield can win a game on his own, and he loves it at Barrow. That's where he's comfortable and where he plays his best football. But yeah, there's just not a whole lot else about them at the minute. So I'm pretty confident that Bristol Rovers will win the game. I've got it as another 2-0, 2-0 home win for Bristol Rovers. I think they'll continue to keep that as I keep banging on about it, but that steady improvement that they're on at the moment. And if they can win, that's three wins in a row, and that's a really good position to be in. So I think it will be a home win for Bristol Rovers.
Yeah, I can't see much more than a Bristol Rovers win, if I'm going to be honest. With Barrow going away from home to a side like that, where they've got their sort of heckles up a little bit after the slow start, yeah, I just can't see much other than a Bristol Rovers win. Although to say that, League Two can also pull up these sort of shots, so it kind of won't be half surprised if maybe Barrow rock up there and pick up a result. I think there's maybe the early form of Bristol Rovers might potentially play a part, but considering that they've won the 3 games in a row, I just can't see it ending there. I think it'll be a 3-1 win for Bristol Rovers. I think they'll be quite comfortable. Luke, did you give a prediction from that, by the way? Because I sort of missed it because it was all going mad.
I did. I said 2-1 Bristol Rovers.
Awesome, right. It's all going swimmingly, this podcast. I've also noticed as well, at the early stages of this, it said review at the bottom, so I quickly changed that to preview. We're a professional podcast. We can probably get that out there. Right, okay, Luke, it's your time to shine because MK Dons. It's your time to shine, Luke, because MK Dons are making the trip to Chesterfield this weekend. Of course, both clubs on the back end of a disappointing defeat at the weekend. Certainly a week to forget for Chesterfield if you're also counting the trophy game against Crewe. But in the league, Chesterfield went to Walsall and lost 1-0 there. Didn't really do a great deal in that one. As for MK Dons, are looking to put that that Grimsby defeat and certainly the first half an hour behind them. As they make the trip, it's a game between the two favourites. I know, Luke, you've been going on about how you've only got one fullback and you're sort of scared with some of their wingers, the likes of Gillingham and whatnot. If they can sort of expose you like we sort of did last week, then maybe make for an interesting game. But it's a game I can actually see goals in. Actually, I feel quite optimistic with this one. I don't think it'll be as boring as. I don't even think I've really seen anyone saying it'll be that boring. I think it might be a half-decent game of football. And you probably expect that from, let's be honest, going into the season. Yes, both teams lost last week, but going into the season, the two favourites to be right up there. How do you feel about it?
Well, yeah, I'm a little bit cautious. As you say, the big thing is just having no left back. It means we're guaranteed to have someone playing out of position to face either Markande or Dobrad based on which side we play Wilson, but I assume you'll play on the right. I know they haven't actually, they've played with their wingers, but they haven't necessarily done wing play as often this season, at least from what I've gathered from listening to some of their fans. But I'd be surprised if they didn't adjust to start trying to exploit the wings a bit more in this game because it makes sense. That's where we're going to have problems. But then equally, I think they're likely to play a high line. And we've got someone like Rashawn Hepburn-Murphy who is absolutely rapid and, will have Dunkley and McFadden for breakfast in a foot race. It's a tricky one to call, but just based on the fact that I think the setup of their squad is probably going to be more suited to this game than ours just because of the lack of availability. So I'd probably lean towards them winning it, especially with home advantage as well. I'm going to say 2-1 to Chesterfield.
You think MK will lose again? Ooh. There'll be 3 defeats in a row, if you need reminding.
What would the pitfalls be of that if you lost 3 in a row? That'd be a pretty.
There'll be the pitchforks will be out from my end on Sunday night. 3 games in a row.
They'd be out from some of our own, I'd imagine. But like I said, it's one of those. Ultimately we've played a Walsall side that, again, to me, in my opinion, weren't that good, but we lost them. We've then played Grimsby, who I think are one of the top sides, and then Chesterfield, who, again, one of the top sides. So it would be a case of, these are our first tests, like proper tests, and we failed them. But that, for me, wouldn't be a cause of, panic just yet, because ultimately it's a 46-game long season. We've got plenty of time to put those final pieces together. So to be going to Chesterfield with a pretty depleted squad, and if we can come away with something, then brilliant. If not, then as long as we look competitive, then I'm happy.
Yeah, fair enough. See, I've actually got it the other way around, but I think it's going to be a really tight game. The thing with Chesterfield, obviously they lost to Walsall last week. But if you go further back, their last 4 games, they've only won once, and that was, I think it was away at Harrogate. But they lost 4-1 to Gills, and then I think they then won, and then they drew at home to Crawley, which for them isn't a particularly good result. They then go and lose at Walsall. I don't think they're in. I don't trust where they are at the moment. I do think the game against MK is very different to the sort of 4 previously or 3 previously. Just in that I think you're the first team they've played in a little while that will try and play football in a similar way to them. So where Dunkley, McFadden, who I've spoken about quite a bit over the last couple of podcasts, I'm not going to go into much more detail, but you don't really have that unless I've missed it. But you don't really have that focal point up front that I think would give them the same issues that a Walsall and a Gillingham gave them. But you're by far going to be a better side with the football. So I just think it'll be a really interesting game. I think you've got 2 sides that have got quite a few players that are far too good for League Two. So I think technically and tactically it'll be quite an interesting matchup. I've got you winning purely because I think you are probably in a slightly better space at the moment, given your second half against Grimsby. Not to put the whole thing on your second half, but given your second half against Grimsby, you're a good size. And I just think Chesterfield are in a bit of a bad spot at the moment. And I think, again, considering their last home game, they drew with were they 2-0 up in that game as well? I can't remember. Maybe I'm wrong, but they drew at home to Crawley, which isn't a great result. So I have it the other way around. Oh, they were 2-0 down and then came back to 2-2. Right. Yeah. But yeah, I've got it flipped round, but it could quite easily go either way. But I've got MK going and winning 2-1.
Yeah, absolutely. And I sort of echo those thoughts about Chesterfield, but I think for MK, I think considering they've lost their last 2, I think this is an important game for them. And I think they need to pick up something. But I totally agree with you what you said on Chesterfield. Personally, I think it'll be more MK. I think they'll go there and I think they'll pick up a result. I'll go for 2-1. I think they'll concede because of the attacking quality we've mentioned, but I just back them to get a result. I'll just back them to respond, especially after that first half. The second half was better, of course, last week. I mean, damage limitation and all that, although they very nearly got back in the game, very nearly nicked something out of it. But they need somewhat more of that, I think. So probably there's your best bet. Right, okay. Crewe Alexandra coming up against Barnet in this one. Now, really interesting matchup, this one. It's got to be said. Crewe went to Colchester last week, picked up a 1-1 draw. Probably a good point for them in the end. I know we've mentioned about Colchester probably doing enough to win the game, and I think they'll probably be disappointed they didn't. But as for Crewe, I think it's a solid point. Of course, that was after the last 2 league games where they lost 1-0 to Gillingham and they lost 3-0 to Swindon. So as for Barnet, a 3-1 loss to Shrewsbury last time out, a pretty poor result from them. But they did win 2. They did win 2 and drew 1 of their last 3 because obviously we know about their slow start to the season. But Crewe, I think they're very capable. They're very capable of putting on a performance, but also they're also capable of putting in a stinker. I feel at Crewe, they're very capable of having a real drab result. Can I see Barnet doing that? Ish, maybe. It sort of depends if they're on it or not, but you can sort of see what Barnet are doing. I'm not sure how effective or even close to it being so far it's really done for them so far. Crewe have looked pretty solid, taking the results aside. I think they sort of need to get back to winning ways as quick as they can, albeit they have played a couple of tough games. Probably deserve something a bit more out of the Gillingham game, and then the game was done at half time against Swindon in the previous one. But like I said, I felt like it was a decent point away at Colchester last week. I need to see more of Barnet. I really do. They're not sort of living up to the hype that everyone's expected. It's still early days, mind, but I think some of the football that they're playing at the minute is madness. I think it's probably safe to say. I think Barnet are very capable of getting the result. Crewe being at home, I think it sort of sways it. I think Crewe will win this 2-1. I think they'll get back to winning ways, personally.
Yeah, I'd say that's a reasonable prediction. Just based off the fact that, the sides that Crewe have been defeated by have been teams that you'd consider to be putting in some kind of challenge this season, at least towards top 7. Gillingham obviously very, very strong so far, and Swindon free scoring when they want to be. And then, as you say, Colchester, yes, Crewe drop points there, but Colchester are very competitive in games, and they will keep the margins tight. Aside from that, Crewe have won against everyone else. They've not lost points from against a team that you'd say is maybe a little bit weaker, which is probably what the situation we'd say that Barnet are in right now. I mean, they are capable of pulling off a very good result. They got that 2-0 win away at Swindon, but outside of that, do I think they've got enough quality to compete with Crewe? I'm not necessarily convinced. And as we say, those mistakes at the back, I think a side like Crewe would probably punish them a bit more. I wouldn't be surprised if Barnet got a goal, but I think I would expect this to be a pretty routine win for Crewe. So I'm going to say 3-1 Crewe.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, like for Barnet, it's one of the worst fixtures you can get, right? Because they're going to be desperate not to let themselves get drawn or dragged back into one of those runs where you just stop picking points up again. They started like that, got a couple of wins, which was great, and then they've had that really bad defeat, deserved defeat at the weekend against Shrewsbury at home. I think Crewe are a really good side. I know they haven't exactly had their best performances over the last couple of games, but Swindon, I'm struggling to judge anybody when they play against Swindon, just because I think they're just they're a really good side. They're free scoring and they drag teams into playing their way. I think against anybody else, I think Crewe have been really, really good. I love the the recruitment that they've done with Tommy O'Reilly coming in, Hutchinson coming in, Rankin, Josh March, Tesgall, and then that kind of just complements the Mickey Demetrius and Jack Powells and players like that. I also think Lee Bell is in a much better position this year to guide them to where they want to be. He's had two, difficult seasons when it comes to trying to get Crewe promoted, but they've been close and they've been there or thereabouts. So I think they'll be in a good spot. I think this is exactly the type of game Barnet didn't need after that loss. I think it's one of the it's going to be such a tough away game for them. I actually think Crewe might blow them away. I'm going for a 3-0 home win. Not great for Barnet, but I can't see how they go there and grind a result out, considering how they played against Shrewsbury last week.
Interesting. It's not the worst prediction in the world, actually. I quite like that. Right, okay. Fleetwood coming up against Walsall. We'll do this one real quick and then we'll head into our feature. I think in terms of maybe the battle ahead, I think this one's a real good one to look out for, because you've got the style of Fleetwood with Peatwell. Yes, they lost last week, lost at Notts County, but you sort of know how they set up against this Walsall side under Matt Sadler. 5 wins from 7 in the in League Two so far, sit third. Have won their last 3 league games 1-0, 3 clean sheets. So defensively already they look sound, and they've played. And those games as well. We should probably put out Salford, MK Dons, and Chesterfield in those last 3 as well. So they're good teams to keep clean sheets against, and that early puts them in good stead. I quite like Walsall. I know I was full of praise from the other week. I like how they sort of attack games. They're sort of patient, but they know how to hit teams at the right time, and the numbers that they get going forward and how they utilise their wing backs. I like how they operate. But I think this will be a very tricky game for them. Maybe so much as well as last week. You've got, like I said, the fact that Fleetwood, they've lost last week at Notts County on a bit of a dodgy pitch after Notts County has gone on there. It'll be a very tricky game for them. I think one. It's one I'm struggling to call, so I'm going to be sitting on the fence with this one. I'll go for a 1-1.
Yeah, that's probably honestly a decent shout. I was actually leaning draw as well. Every single sort of play, they may not have drawn any yet, but every single game it's been either a goal to or a goal against. There's never been more than a 1-goal differential. It's always very tight. The thing is that they obviously defend well, but going forwards, I'm not really convinced. Their top scorer is Connor Barrett with 2 defender. They've got a couple of strikers, got 1 each, but just not convinced they've got that sort of talisman up front. I'm pretty convinced that any of the players they've got are a player. And I do think Fleetwood is going to be a good test. This is going to sound weird, but Walsall will have more of the ball than necessarily want. They're very good without it and very good in transition. Fleetwood have had more possession than the opposition team in most games they've played so far this season. Not like dramatically. It's been relatively close, so it might be a case that Walsall have to come out a little bit more to face Fleetwood. It's hard to call a winner. To be honest, I'm going to go 1-1.
It's difficult for it because it's two sides that I really like. Actually, it's just that one is far more consistent than the other. Walsall are so good at being difficult opposition and grinding results out, and I mean that in the best possible way, because it is a really good way of getting promoted. And I dare say it's kind of what you've got us and Bromley, we're all kind of playing a similar way, and it's margins, right? I mean, Wimbledon gave us the blueprint last year. It can work. It is a way of getting yourself up there. They've had two phenomenal results back to back, beaten two really, really good sides. I think they'll be oozing confidence, and I don't think they're going to be going to Fleetwood with any fear. I think I said I love the Daniel Carnu signing the other day, and he obviously scored his goal. I think I mentioned him twice on this podcast now, but I expect him to go and score quite a few goals this year. Fleetwood, on the other hand, I think they need to start really trying to put some consistent results together. They had a really good start. I think they won their first two and drew their third. But they've been a bit all over the place since then. They've got a squad that I really like, and I really like Pete Wild and what he does. But I just think at the moment they're too all over the place with their results. Then their performances aren't consistent. I think this game is going to be the first goal, and I know it's a cliche, but with the way Walsall play, because I recognise it, the first goal is going to be so important. And I actually think Walsall might go there and get another 1-0 win. I know statistically you can't keep winning 1-0. It's not something that most teams do. I think we did 5 in a row a few years ago. I think we won the first 5 1-0 or something, so it can happen. And I just think that they're in a really good space at the moment, and I think anybody that plays against them is going to have a really difficult, horrible time, and that's exactly where they want the opposition. So I'm going to go for a 1-0 Walsall away win.
Perfect. Okay, let's have a quick break from that. Let's do this week's feature, of course, in sponsorship with Sky Bet. And very late request for this was like, right, okay, what can we do, because we don't know. And Jack Walton came up with the good question of most underrated players in the league. Now, we've not had long to think about this. I've sort of had a little think about it. I could just say George McEachran and move on. I know that. I think with me just saying that, I've given him full of praise on this podcast enough, but I really don't think he gets the credit he deserves. Just a terrific footballer, and especially how he bossed that game, how he bossed the midfield at MK Dons in the first half before the ball whacked him in his face to put it in his own net 2 minutes into the second half at MK. But no, other than that, I mean, sort of going off our player side, although I do think Ty Warren is actually quite underrated as a centre back. Actually, I think he put a foot wrong because it's been there. But players I quite like, I sort of have going on about it. I'm more just going off players that I've seen Town play live as well, more than anything. But I suppose you could probably fit it in. I know Jack mentioned Samson Tavide. He's a player I really like, strength, powerful. Of course, if he could sort of improve one or two things, he'll be a deadly player. I mean, I've always quite liked Aaron Mane. I know I'm not sure if he's more underrated or anything like that, but he just seems to do something every time I watch him play. And then, I could, especially and even on Saturday as well. I was never safe when he got on the ball with his pace and power. I think there's a couple from Colchester you could pick out. We've mentioned some of their wingers. I know we've mentioned Tavide. I mean, the World Edwards has come up leaps and bounds, their winger, since we had him on loan. 2020 now. You can see that he was all out, just had no end products, but you can see that he's really picked up his game now. I think there's a couple of players from Walsall you could pick up. I know Jamie Jealous was the talk of the town for the first half of most season, but Charlie Lakin's a player I love. Just a terrific midfield. I know Jack Walters mentioned Nohan Kenner, the new Tranmere midfielder, is a player I've not really seen, to be honest. I can't really comment a great deal, but he does look like a bit of a tank in midfield. And there's a couple of others. Nick Cerula, I'm quite a fan of at Notts County. There's a few in there. But I'm still going to stick with our George, because I really don't think he does get the credit he deserves. He's a wonderful, wonderful footballer. And the fact that I think more people are starting to see that, but the fact that I think it's the case of people are starting to see that now does blow my mind, actually. But I don't know. I don't know what you think about this subject, because it's a really interesting question, actually.
Yeah, it's kind of one I wish I'd had more time to think about, really. You know, there's a lot of players in League Two that you could kind of make a case for. Obviously I can't really say any of our players, because I'll get absolutely crucified if I say any of ours, because we're the team with all.
I mean, they're all full of that, so I'm not sure if you're saying that.
Yeah, no. If I was to say any of ours, I'd say Conor Lemonade Evans, just proper battler. No one would ever think of him from our
probably
squad.
agree with that based on that alone.
Yeah, he's just a proper battler. Runs for absolutely everything. I just love his commitment. Those sorts of players that will get stuck in, but still have that little bit of technical ability as well. That sort of midfielder, I'm very much keen on. But to bring it back to the rest of the league, I think there's a couple of players I'd mention. Stephen Duke McKenna, straight away. I mean, he was one that this time last year when he was signing for Harrogate, I was kind of like, really? Like, I wasn't necessarily convinced, but actually, I mean, especially in recent weeks, he's obviously been very, very good. But he's got that turn of pace, obviously that quality with his finishing as well. And the other player I'd mention is another winger. Did used to play for us, so I suppose it's kind of cheating. But Sully Kaikai at Cambridge, I think he's got a lot of quality. The fact that he's down in League Two now seems ridiculous to me. He looked like a decent player. We had him when we got relegated, annoyingly, but he's one of those I kind of hoped we'd hold on to, and Cambridge have managed to do that. I think he's a player that will certainly help them stabilise and get back up to hopefully back up towards the right end of the division this season. But we'll wait and see. But he's had a reasonable start this season, and I'd say those two names are the ones that I'd go with for now.
Do you know what? I'm going to take it the other way, because we've spoken a lot about midfielders and centre forward. So I'm going to look at the less exciting defensive players. I think I'm going to have. I mean, I will mention one of ours. I could say Sam Gale, but he's being spoken about on all sorts of podcasts, and he's being tweeted about all over the place. And he's a young player, so I'm gonna move on from him. Shadrach Ogie, our left-sided centre half when we play a 3. I think on his day, and I mean this genuinely, I think on his day is the best centre half in the league. When he plays in a 2, it can be a bit ropey. When he's put out of position at left back, he has got a little bit of he has got a mistake in him. But if he's on the left hand side of a back 3, I haven't seen a defender dominate people like I've seen him dominate people. He's absolutely rapid, incredibly strong, and he doesn't lose a header. And he'll take the ball, and he'll take the ball into midfield as well. He can do things with the ball that I haven't seen a lot of centre halves be able to do. So he'd be my first. But talking about other clubs, Mickey Demetriou, I have to mention. I don't know if you could class him as underrated, because I think everybody probably looks at Mickey Demetriou and knows how good he is. But he's certainly one I would put in there. But my kind of top choice in this would be Farron Rawson at Accrington Stanley. Again, they play in a 3, and I don't think there's a better. People will probably say Aidan Flint. I don't think so. I think Farron Rawson in the middle of a 3 is, I think, the best centre half in the division. I really do. I think he rarely loses a battle. He rarely loses a duel. Appreciate he's not the quickest bloke in the world, but I think he would get into most sides that play that system. Which is why I rate him highly, but I do worry for Tavide, because I think at the weekend, because I you know what Rawson's going to do. I think he's just going to make his life hell for 90 minutes. So Rawson would be my top pick, I think.
I've totally forgotten to mention one name, and yes, it's another. I think for Grimsby, I think there's a few you can say, but now you've mentioned it. No, I don't care. I don't care. I may be biased, but I don't care. I think Cam Janet is awfully underrated. Left-footed is a manager's dream. Very good on the ball. Very composed. His passing range is unreal. He's quite quick as well. Doesn't get bullied that easily. He's just been so consistent. But it's because we shipped so many goals between the start of last season when he came in and to now. I don't think he really gets the credit he deserves. Yeah, he's another one I'd point out. And yes, I know there were Grimsby heavy there. But I truly believe that we have some of the best talent going in the league at the minute. I think it's going quite under the radar a little bit. And hopefully we keep it that way. Let's get back onto the predictions and the preview. 6 to go. We're on 50 minutes. We're going to rattle through these very quickly. Gillingham are coming up against Notts County. Gillingham came back from 2 goals down last week to draw with Bromley 2-2. We've debated about the penalty, but it kept their unbeaten run going and are still top of the league. Notts County, they picked up 3 wins from the last 4, picked up that 1-0 win at home to Fleetwood last week. And have had some pretty decent results in there, beating Tranmere, come back from 1-0 down to win that one. Hammering Shrewsbury, but I think it's probably been times where who hasn't, although picked up a draw against Bromley. Good result for them. Jack, we'll come to you first because obviously it's Gills. How do you feel?
Yeah, okay. I'm actually not going to talk about Gills. I'm going to focus more on Notts, to be honest with you, just because I think it's interesting. I think Martin Patterson has changed and is currently changing a lot of the thoughts around from a lot of people that they had when he came in. I think their last few results, like you said, 4-1 to Shrewsbury, 2-2 at home to Bromley, great result. Gone to Tranmere and won, beaten Fleetwood. I think they're really starting to click and starting to gel. It looks like the fan base has really come around as well. I think his intensity, the way he carries himself and the way he talks, I think he's really starting to get in with their fan base too. And can't help but mention, Luke, I know you'll know him better than anybody else, but Matt Dennis is like on fire at the moment. So yeah, really good period for Notts County. I'm going to back Gills. I'm going to back us to win 2-1. I think Notts will score. But I can't not back us to win. We're on a really good run. We're at home. Fans will be well up for it. Notts travel well, so the atmosphere will be really good. So yeah, I'll go 2-1 Gills.
I really wanted to argue with you just because like coming into this, like whilst we were doing this whole underrated player thing, I was having a look at this game thinking, oh, you know what, Notts have goals in them, they could actually do this. But then I've had a bit of a deeper look. Most of their goals are from open play. Obviously, Dennis is on fire. And I mean, if anyone can beat Gillingham from open play, Notts are probably one of the teams that could maybe do it. But at the same time, if Gillingham are having a good day in defence, I can't necessarily see that happening. And then it comes down to set pieces. And I don't think Notts are very good at set pieces. And I certainly don't think they're very good at defensive set pieces. And that's where I think you could really hurt them. So as much as I was initially thinking, oh, you know what, Notts are going to end the run, it's finally going to be over, I've kind of talked myself out of it, and I'm instead going the other way, and I'm going to go. Oh, what am I going to go? I'm going to go 2-0 Gillingham.
I'm going to go 1-0 Gillingham. Actually, I think they'll keep a clean sheet. I think they'll run a
safe bet.
I think Matt Dennis's very good goal scoring run will come to an end, and I think it'll be a very tight, close. Yeah, it'll probably be another game in which Gillingham score late. I've just got that gut feeling about it. But that's sort of where my thinking is. Right, okay, Grimsby Town up next. We're at home to Cambridge United in this one, of course. We picked up 3 points at MK Dons last week. Very good performance, although stuff to work on in the second half. I know I did mention that. I think David Artell mentioned that the players were disappointed in that second half performance, despite a victory. But that's the sort of mindset I like. I'm a real big fan of that mindset. Coming up against Cambridge, lost to Oldham last week. Of course, that was Oldham's first win of the season. We'll get to them in a minute, but this will be a tight game. I think. I feel like Cambridge will be more than happy to settle for a point. Look, put it this way: if teams try to play football against us, I think we win games comfortably. I think we're that good at just outplaying, just playing football the way that maybe other teams try to start. But I think the question I sort of got is maybe if teams maybe sort of come defensively and sort of maybe come for a point, try to shut up shop a little bit, which I may have a feeling Cambridge might do. that'll be, I think, our biggest challenge, and if we can break them down or not. But I think it's hard to not be positive about Grimsby at the minute. Look, 14 points picked up, 4th in the table at the minute. They've had a very good start to the season, just the 1 defeat. Cambridge have started all right as well. Look, they picked up 10 points, and they've had some solid victories as well. I think it's easily a game in which, could be the nil, probably not a 0-0, but probably maybe a 1-1. But I have a feeling, I think maybe with us at home, I feel that if there is going to be a winner, I'd like to think it'd be us, Grimsby. But yeah, I don't want to back us to lose, so that's all I'll say on it.
Yeah, this is another one I'm looking at as it's quite a tricky one. Obviously, Cambridge have a bit of a point to prove after losing to Oldham, and I know you're talking about the potential setup for Cambridge there, and actually, I was just looking through the possession stats for all their recent games. More often than not, they have more of the ball, and in a couple of the games they've had a lot of it, and I just don't think they're necessarily going to have it their way in this sort of game. All of their away games so far, again, there's been a goal in it. It's either been for them or against them, but it's never been more than a goal differential. I think based on momentum, I think it's hard to stop Grimsby at the minute. I just don't think Cambridge are the right sort of side to stop them. I'm going to go 2-1 Grimsby.
Yeah, I like that. I think Cambridge's start's been a bit of a weird one. It's been steady, but it's definitely I can't see it being what they would have expected, and certainly what Neil Harris probably would have wanted it to be. I think they're last week losing at home to Oldham that's a poor result for them. I mean, I like Oldham. I think they're a good side, but for Cambridge to lose 1-0 at home to anybody is probably it's not a good result. But to Oldham specifically, a team down that end of the table, I think that'll be that'll have hit them hard. I think Neil Harris he'll have had him working overtime in the week to try and put it right at Grimsby. I think flip side though, Grimsby, I think they're going to be absolutely buzzing after not even just last weekend. I know there was the Bristol Rovers result, but it's been such a brilliant couple of weeks. I think the likes of Charles Vernam and Kieran Green and Jays, they're going to be chomping at the bit to just get back out there and do some damage to somebody. I don't think Neil Harris, his teams don't generally get turned over and battered. He's not associated with that. But I think 2-1 Grimsby home win. Yeah, I can't look past Grimsby at the minute. They're just looking too good.
Yeah, that's sort of my thinking with that at the minute. Let's move on to Oldham. I know we sort of mentioned them there. Obviously, they were the side that beat Cambridge last week. Probably a long overdue win for Oldham. You sort of felt that it was going to happen sooner rather than later. But to go to Cambridge and pick up their first win of the season, great result for them. They've got a tricky test, though, coming up against Bromley, another unbeaten side. Very nearly picked up 3 points against Gillingham last week, with that game finishing 2-2.
Nearly.
But look, a very good side either way, and it'll be a tough test for Oldham. But look, they've certainly, like I said, at home, they've certainly deserved more, I feel. I think they'll certainly give Bromley a game. Whether it'll be enough to beat them, I'm not too sure. I think this will be a very close game. I think it will be a good game. I don't think Bromley will win it. I don't think they'll lose it though either. I can see this being another a 2-2 draw. I've just got that feeling. If it clicks for Oldham, it's great. I know that they're missing a couple of players, but I mean, look, Michael Mellon scoring last week was a big plus. But it's just whether they need to start doing that on a more consistent basis. They need to start hitting the net a lot more and keep Kane Drummond away from that goal as much as possible from the sounds of things. But I just feel like it'll happen for Oldham. It'll happen, and I think the win last week will do them the world of good going into this one. That's sort of my feeling about it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting one. You've got a team that don't concede many in Oldham. Only Walsall have conceded less than them. And then you've got a Bromley side that are just very, very good at scoring goals. It makes for a very tricky matchup when you're sort of trying to predict it. Obviously, that's a huge the Oldham getting their win. That's a huge weight lifted off their shoulders, and I just think if one team could stop Bromley from going for it. It's just one of those. I think it doesn't make sense for Oldham to be the ones to stop them, but I think they potentially actually could. Like I said, I think just the way momentum works in football, I just wouldn't be surprised. And actually, I am going to go with Oldham. I'm going to go 2-1. I don't think they'll stop Bromley from scoring necessarily, but 2-1.
I think this is exactly the sort of game Oldham are going to be really bang up for. A little bit like they were against us a couple of weeks ago. I think this sort of team at home is going to be Oldham's comfort zone to an extent. Bromley, where we struggled against Bromley at the weekend, we didn't start well. We weren't on it. And I think where Michael Cheek and Nicky Kabamba sort of bullied and battered us for effectively the first half, almost all game really. I don't think Oldham have got Manny Month at the back. They've got Donovan Daniels. They're not going to let that happen. Obviously, Oldham are going to be carrying some confidence from the win at Cambridge. I think Michael Mellon will be, he'll be bang up for it. He'll be wanting to try and kickstart a bit of a scoring run. I don't think it's going to be full of goals, but I think it's going to be a really fun watch. Not for the quality of football, but I just think for the battles, the individual battles and the intensity, I think it'd be really good. I think I'm going to go for a 1-1. I don't think Bromley... Andy Woodman's going to do absolutely everything he can possibly do to make sure they don't lose the game. But I think Oldham will have enough to stop them from winning it. So I'll say 1-1.
Yeah, absolutely right. 3 games to go. Again, we'll rattle through these very quickly. Shrewsbury Town coming up against Salford. Look, Shrewsbury had a little bit of joy last week, beating Barnet, their first win of the season. I know we're sort of in up in arms a little bit how, for Shrewsbury, for them to sort of enjoy this. But I still under the impression I don't think it means anything unless they go and pick up something against Salford. Tricky game for them. I mean, Salford have started the season pretty well. They picked up some good results, beat Tranmere last week. They're very capable, and they've dominated quite a few games they've played. Maybe they probably could have scored more than probably would have suggested, but I think Shrewsbury at home, look, it'll be a tough game for me either way. And do you know what? Do I? 0-0. 0-0. It might seem a little bold, but again, just that gut feeling. I think they'll do well to keep Salford out. But certainly, if they do, I think they'll certainly be walking away with something. I know it's very cliche-like, but maybe I can maybe see them getting something from this. Actually, I don't know. Football's a wonderful game, isn't it? It's certainly a funny game, and you see that maybe these sort of results might get branched out a little bit. Yeah, let's stick with that. A little bit bold, but why not?
Yeah, I mean, statistically, this is probably one you'd expect Salford to do well in. I'm looking at the games that Shrewsbury have played. The only time they've picked up, points against the side that I would consider to be a top half side was opening the season against Bromley, where they drew 0-0. Typically when Shrewsbury so far this season have been faced with quality, they haven't had an answer to it. But then at the same time, Salford do have that sort of slip up in them. They obviously slipped against Cheltenham the other week. That being said, I just like to think that Salford wouldn't make the same mistake twice. I wouldn't be surprised if they made it hard for themselves, but I'm going to go 1-0 Salford. They'll get the job done, but it won't be as convincing as we probably think it should be.
So yeah, I mean, I love the win for Shrewsbury last week. It was absolutely deserved. They were the better side. Could have had more goals. Appreciate a couple of the goals that went in. You could class as maybe slightly fortuitous, but they were by far the better side. It will give them a load of confidence that sort of going into the game. Chucks and EK's come in. Really good signing for the level, providing he can stay fit and available. He was huge for Cheltenham for the last, not so much last season, admittedly, but 2-3 years before that, played a lot of football under Michael Appleton at Cheltenham as well. So that that relationship's there. They know each other really well. Not entirely sure what that means for John Marquise now though, because obviously he's captain, kind of a similar profile to Chucks and EK. So Salford they'll be very confident as we've discussed. Win over Tranmere, really good performance. All evidence says that Salford will win the game, but I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Hopefully Shrewsbury can just keep that, bit of momentum from last week, keep it going.
Yeah, I should probably point out as well, if there was going to be a winner, it'll probably will be for Salford. Right, Swindon, they're coming up against Harrogate, Simon Weaver's men, taking a trip down to face Ian Holloway's men. Harrogate sort of lost their way a little bit after a half-decent start to the season. A couple of defeats, of course, losing to Crawley last week. Swindon, they're doing really well for themselves at the minute. Second in the table, 15 points picked up, 14 goals scored, the highest in the league. And they just look like they've got goals in them. Of course they do. But they've also had a couple of games in which maybe they have struggled. I mean, I look at the Barnet game in particular. They're very capable of having those sort of performances in there, and then Walsall wasn't ideal either. I think with this one, I just think it's a game in which Harrogate will just shut up shop, and I just think it'll be. It's a long way to go. I know they played yesterday as well. There was at Mansfield yesterday, picked up a win there in the trophy. They'll probably just try and shut up shop and try and get a win there. I think it'll be more Swindon's task to try and break them down. That's just how I see Harrogate. They're very good at just sort of nicking points on the road. I just can't look past Swindon at the minute. I think they'll win 2-0. I think it'll be quite a comfortable one at the minute as well, considering how Harrogate have been last couple of weeks with some of the results that they've had.
Yeah, I mean, Harrogate haven't done too bad on the road so far this season, to be fair. They got the win against Bristol Rovers on the opening day. Draw against Cambridge is, again, pretty decent. Lost 2-0 to Bromley, but again, Bromley, very good side at the minute. Obviously, Harrogate's form has dipped a little bit, lost the last 3 in the league. It's one of those. I can definitely agree with the fact that they'll probably set up relatively defensively, but I mean, Swindon will just throw the kitchen sink at them because that's just how they play. They will throw absolutely everything at them, and I'm not sure Harrogate will necessarily have enough to stop that. I do think they do have a little bit of firepower, so I could see them scoring. I think it's going to be, again, relatively comfortable. I'm going to go 3-1 Swindon.
Yeah, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Swindon are on fire. Harrogate, obviously not in the best of form. I think I had it down as a 3-1 home win to Swindon. I think Harrogate will score just because of how Swindon play. But I have nothing to add other than I think Swindon will win this one comfortably.
Okay, and one more game to go. Tranmere coming up against Newport. I would say it's Shaq Walton coming up against Kieran, but because considering Kieran hasn't been on for ages, I'm not even sure if he's really part of the team anymore. But we're still counting this as another FCS showdown in this one. Tranmere back-to-back defeats in the league, losing to Notts County and Salford. The Salford one looked like they were pretty well beaten in that one. Newport, there are concerns for them. 22nd in the table and 5 defeats in a row. So they need points. I know I was speaking to Jack yesterday, sort of not that convinced that Tranmere as maybe you sort of was a few weeks ago. But look, I think it's a tough one because both sort of need a win. Newport in particular because of their run that they've been on, and the longer this goes on, the concerns just get deeper. Prenton Park, I can't look past Tranmere at the minute. I just got the feeling that they'll just bounce back to winning ways. I think it'll be a closely fought, 2-1 win. I just got the feeling that they'll probably get something from this.
Yeah, 2-1 is exactly what I was going to say. 2-1 Tranmere. Newport have lost their last 5, and I appreciate they've played some decent teams in that side, but it comes back to the point of they always seem to set up for a point, and that's you can't approach football like that. And I don't think it's going to help them if they keep playing the same system. And based off of what we've seen, I don't think we're going to see anything different. I just can't look past Tranmere. They do have some defensive frailties at times, so I wouldn't be surprised if Newport got a goal just to make it interesting. But 2-1 Tranmere to me makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm sticking on the Tranmere theme. I think I know they've had a couple of bad results recently, but you look further on from that, they've been okay. They've been pretty good. They've picked up some really good wins, a couple of good draws as well. So I think I've got this down as a 2-0 home win. Probably harsh on Newport. Talking about it now, listening to you guys, maybe Newport get a goal. Maybe it's a bit tighter than I've got it in my head. But I just think Tranmere have got more quality than Newport. And Newport didn't really do. I know they came back into the game last week, and I gave them a lot of credit for that. But I think away from home, it's a slightly different scenario. I think if Tranmere score, I think heads might drop. So, I'm going to go 2-0 home win Tranmere.
Absolutely, and that's where we'll wrap up for this week's preview episode. Of course, thank you guys for listening as always. An hour, 10 minutes. Would have liked for it to be a little bit shorter, but when you've got conversations like that, I mean, I don't really mind too much. I think Ryan might. Oh well, that'll be a conversation that I'll have with him. But look, any support is hugely appreciated. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, your predictions for the games. We'd like to know whether we're off the mark, we're talking rubbish again, or we've actually got something bang on. I don't know. We want to hear it. Of course, like and subscribe as always. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcast from. We'll be back probably Monday when you're listening to the review for the 6 games that we'll pick up from this weekend. All the best to your teams at the weekend. It should be said, and we'll see you guys on the next podcast. Until then, take care.